How's it going, guys? My name's Tuja and welcome back to MBT Studio. So today we're looking at a very affordable speaker. It is an active studio near-field monitor from a company called Adam Audio. And in the past we reviewed the T8V, the smaller brother of this bookshelf, but today we are reviewing the T8V. And this will run you about $600 USD the pair. It is essentially a powered speaker that is used more in a studio environment. So what does that mean? Well, if you're a sound engineer or work in a studio, you essentially use speakers like this as a tool. It basically is supposed to sound colorless as possible or as transparent. And it's a way for a sound engineer to basically really dig into the track and, basically look into the track and know what's going on. So today we are reviewing this speaker and I'm pretty excited because there's a lot of performance put into the speaker and I think it is amazing. So I'll just say that right there. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the features and what the speaker is all about. So the T8V essentially is a big bookshelf speaker. It goes down to 33 Hertz, which is very notable. It's something that I noticed with the smaller brother. You'd want to tie in a subwoofer with that speaker to really get a full range response. What Adam Audio really did with this speaker is that they managed to get this speaker to go down to 33 Hertz. And for those of you who are new to, let's say, studio monitors or speakers, when a speaker is spec'd down to 33 Hertz, that doesn't mean there's no information under that 33 Hertz mark. That's when the speaker starts rolling off. So essentially, you're still gonna have, bass that you can feel with this speaker. Now, in terms of driver design, they use an AMT tweeter. Essentially, it's a folded ribbon, and the membrane that they call, or its tweeter design, they call it their UART design with an HPS waveguide. So AMT tweeters are pretty cool because they are very fast, and they technically have a larger surface area for the actual, transducer. And what that results in is a very, very detailed sound. And then the waveguide itself is meant to essentially minimize the distortion or breakup and widen the sweet spot or off-axis response when listening to the speaker. So typically you would use this speaker near field. So you don't actually have to be right in the middle to get a decent sound. It's not going to sound off. If you move a little bit to the left or right, it's still going to sound excellent. It's going to have excellent imaging, soundstage, and it's going to still produce a very holographic sound. Now, what's powering this entire speaker is a 70 watt Class D amp for the bass driver and 20 watts RMS for the tweeter. On the back, you get two inputs. One is XLR and one is RCA, so balanced or unbalanced. And then there's a sensitivity switch to adjust for the sensitivity or gain for each of those inputs. You also get adjustments for both bass and treble. So depending on your room and how you have it set up and your own taste, you can adjust the bass +2, 0, or -2, and the same with the treble. Besides that, you also get a gain knob. So depending on your preamp, you can adjust the gain to basically compensate for a weaker signal or a stronger signal. But besides that, this speaker is an MDF construction. Nothing crazy, the finish is basically within that price point, but they pack a lot into this. The actual baffle right there has this little contoured edge on it, and that's supposed to prevent edge diffraction. And it's that added touch that just makes this speaker even more impressive. So after all that, let's talk about the sound because that's where it counts. So this is a speaker that can basically perform as good as a floor standard in terms of authority and bass response. And that is something that you really don't get at this price point. Now, the actual woofer itself is 8 inches. It's a polypropylene driver. And the biggest thing for me was, the T8V sounded very cohesive. The driver integration was great. But, once you get a bigger driver, a larger mass to really control, sometimes you can hear that crossover point and the integration isn't great. But what Adam Audio did with this speaker is that they essentially made a DSP crossover and optimized it so well that the actual integration of this 8-inch with the AMT tweeter is just phenomenal. I cannot make out the crossover point, and it just gives a nice smooth frequency response throughout. And this is a studio monitor, as I said, so it's supposed to be uncolored and as flat as possible. There is no real humps in any frequency, and it's meant to be that way. So the biggest thing I noticed with this speaker was the bass. So typically with a bookshelf speaker, you have a mid-bass hump. The reason they put that in there is so the speaker can essentially sound bigger or more full range than what it actually is. So there would be this huge increase in mid-bass to make it seem like a bigger speaker. This is a speaker that doesn't need that because it can go down low. It can really dig in deep. So this 8-inch driver, the bass comes off relatively fast and linear, and it's something I really have to appreciate. Now it is a rear ported design, so you may think, oh, well, close up to a wall in near field, that would be a problem. But no, it doesn't need that much space or, just like an inch or two to really sound good. And the reason they are able to do that is how they optimize the speaker and the flared port inside. So this flared port essentially allows the speaker to be very close to the wall without the bass being boomy or really hearing any kind of turbulence or air from the port, even at high volumes. Now this is a massive speaker. So near field, you may want to use on stands or on the side. Like even on my desk, I couldn't accommodate it as much as I wanted to because it's just massive. But we did evaluate it in a traditional hi-fi setup. So in Jay's house, we basically put these on stands and tried them in a medium room, not only near field. And surprise, surprise, this was able to fill the room no problem. The detail and resolution was still there, and it still retained its really good holographic sound and imaging. It was honestly pretty amazing, and $600, that is unheard of. Like you're basically getting a built-in amp, the speaker itself. The only real thing you'll need for this speaker in particular is a DAC and preamp. And a lot of these new digital DACs can work as a digital preamp, and that will essentially control this speaker no problem. So how about the mid-range? Well, it's not rich or lush like the speakers I'm used to. Like even my KEF R100s, it has this emphasis on female vocals. Even the R11s, vocals just sound really, really, like it has a bit of gut, and the vocals sound like it's more livelier. This doesn't do that. Rather, it presents the track that you're listening to as is, which isn't a big problem. As an audiophile, a lot of us just want the most accurate representation as possible, and that's what this speaker will do. Whether it's a really bad recording, well, you'll know. If it's a good recording, you will know. If that recording has an emphasis on certain frequency ranges, well, you will know that. And this speaker does that. What really makes it stand out is, as I said, the imaging, the linear bass response, and the detail that really comes out of this speaker with that wide sweet spot. And I think for anyone who's really getting to the hobby, or just trying to get a speaker, a relatively like a really good sound for the price, this is a speaker that you can look into. However, it's not rainbows and unicorns, because there is one thing. It's not the best looking speaker. It doesn't have the perfect construction. I mean, the speaker looks like it's like vinyl wrapped, or there's like this coating on top. It's MDF, and it may not fit with everyone's decor. Hence why it's studio-like design. Rather, it disappears if your environment allows it. So that's the one thing you may have to watch out for. So it may not have a high wife approval factor, depending if you are single or not. But anyways, this speaker, overall, I give it a very high appraisal. It's awesome. It really is something that not only works for a studio environment, but it works for people who are listening to music for pleasure, not as a tool. It's like both worlds at once, and honestly, it's really nice. Like, we get really expensive gear, we get really high-end speakers, and you expect them to sound good and to wow you at that price point. But it's when we get a speaker like this for $600 and it's able to fill the room, really engage the end user, that is something worth celebrating. So that basically wraps up my review. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions. Like and subscribe if you haven't, and check out our Patreon if you haven't. And that basically wraps it up. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.